Oh, hello, this is quite exciting for me because I've got something very special in my hand. As you can see, this is issue 1 of Fantastic Four from 1961, and it's in absolutely beautiful condition. Pure white pages, no creases, no tears, no stains, no rust, no mould. It's in near mint condition. Now, I reckon in this condition, it's worth about £150,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hold on a minute, there's no ink on that comic. And you're right, there isn't. But it doesn't matter. The reason being that because the ink that is used to print a comic is only worth a few pence, the fact there's no ink on the comic only reduces its value by a few pence. And I have the ink. So, I've got the paper, I've got the ink, I've got the staples, I have the entire comic. So, in my hand, it's £150,000 worth of property. Now, I must admit, I only paid £120,000 for it. The reason being, the bloke I got it from, frankly, I ripped him off. When it comes to finances, I'm a bit of a wheelie dealer. So now I've got it, I thought what I'd do is I'd read it and I'd record a reaction video like the young people do. So let's open it up and see what I make of it. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's a big one. Oh, those are two big ones. I used to have wallpaper like that. I never used to have a phone like that though. Oh, hold on a minute. Am I reading this upside down? So, what happens is this. Reed Richards wants to steal a spaceship and fly into outer space. His best friend Ben Grimm doesn't want to go with him because he thinks it's an absolutely stupid idea. Fortunately, there's another stupid person in the room, which is Sue Storm, and she convinces him that he has to help Reed steal a spaceship because if he doesn't, the communists will beat America into space. One, why she's so obsessed with communists, I've no idea. Secondly, why she's so scared of communists beating America into space, I also have no idea. Bearing in mind that in the real world, the communists did beat America into space, and as far as I'm aware, nothing bad happened. I mean, something bad happened to the dog that was sent into space because it basically went round and round and round until it died, which is really bad for the dog, but wasn't particularly bad for America. So, that argument won. They all leap in a car and drive off to the nearest spaceport. Now, it's not actually said if this is their car. Bearing in mind they're planning to steal a spaceship, you wouldn't be surprised if they also stole the car. Probably Sue told Ben, Ben, you've got to steal the car for us because if you don't, communists will beat us to stealing the car. So they get in the car, they drive off to the nearby spaceport. Now, I do have to say, I am very impressed by the fact that they've got a spaceport on the outskirts of town, because there is no spaceport on the outskirts of my town. In fact, there's not even an airport on the outskirts of my town. There is an airport that's about 20 miles away, but you can only get to it by using country lanes, because for some reason it never occurred to anyone to build road or rail links between Sheffield and its airport. So, if they ever built a spaceport on the outskirts of Sheffield, it would probably be impossible to get to it by any means other than on foot, on the grounds that they would have made it totally inaccessible to any kind of wheeled vehicle. But having said that, I do believe, according to the internet, that Sheffield Doncaster Airport is an airport that, because of the length of its runway, has been designated as an emergency landing pad for the space shuttle. So, technically, if they ever launch another space shuttle, and it needs to make an emergency landing, technically Doncaster Sheffield Airport could become a spaceport, which would be quite exciting. But, of course, they'd have to launch some space shuttles, which they're not planning to do. So anyway, they get to the spaceport, and when they're there, they cunningly get past the guard, basically by running straight past him, which suggests he's not the most alert of individuals. They get in the rocket, don't bother with the countdown, and they tootle off into outer space. There's only one problem, which is that Reed Richards, despite apparently being a genius, totally overlooked the need to have lead shielding on a spaceship that was designed to fly through a radiation belt. So, almost as soon as they get off the ground, they're in trouble. Basically, they're being bombarded with radiation, they don't feel very well, and the spaceship crashes. Once it's crashed, they all get out and they start doing what they're very good at, which is arguing. And it's during all this arguing that they realise they've got superpowers. Basically, Sue Storm turns invisible. Now the thing about invisibility is this. In the real world, invisibility would be like the greatest superpower ever. I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to return invisible? In a comic book, it's the worst superpower ever, because it's basically just the power to hide. And who wants to read about a superhero hiding? Well, admittedly I might, but I don't think anyone else would. You can only think how much better would the Fantastic Four comics have been in the 60s if Sue Storm had an actual real superpower, like firing death rays from her eyeballs, or punching people with her hair. Then Ben discovers that he's been transformed by the rays. He turns into an orange brick thing of no fixed shape, and decides, with his even temper, that he wants to kill Reed Richards. Unfortunately, he can't kill Reed Richards because Reed Richards now has the flexibility of knicker elastic. All this excitement gets too much for Johnny Storm, who bursts into flame and starts flying around setting fire to everything. And once all this has settled down, it occurs to the Fantastic Four that basically they should use their powers for the good of humanity and to protect the world from people like themselves. And that's when you get this absolutely weird panel where Ben says, "I'm not Ben anymore, I am a horrible inhuman monster." And Reed Richards instantly responds by going, "And I'll call myself Mr. Fantastic." And you think, hold on a minute, how about you actually point out to your friend that he's not a horrible inhuman monster, but he's still a human being and still has value as a living creature. Don't just leap straight in declaring yourself to be Mr. Fantastic and ignoring his existential plight. So, anyway, they all sort of stick their hands together and say, right, that's it, from now on we're the Fantastic Four. I do have to say this. I do get the impression that Reed Richards basically planned all this. That he wanted there not to be enough radiation shielding. He wanted to be exposed to radiation. He wanted to get superpowers. He wanted everyone else to get superpowers so he could be their leader and call himself Mr. Fantastic. I suspect that in his head, for his entire life, Reed Richards has been calling himself Mr. Fantastic, and this has been his chance to live up to it. Now the thing is this, I have always seen the Fantastic Four's origin as being quite mystical and magical. The reason being that I never had Mighty World of Marvel #1, which reprinted the story. So although I was reading the Fantastic Four stories on a regular basis from 1972 onwards, I never actually read their origin until 1976 when I read it in Origins of Marvel Comics. So it always felt a bit magical and mystical to me. And I still have a lot of affection for it, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, why is it so easy to steal a spaceship? Why are they not arrested for stealing a spaceship? And of course, there's the problem that the Fantastic Four, as defined in this issue, are completely pathologically unsuitable for being superheroes. You've got a reckless egomaniac, you've got a man with anger management issues, you've got a teenager who likes to set things on fire, you've got a woman with McCarthyite anti-communist obsessions who's probably a kleptomaniac, and they're clearly not people you would trust to save the earth. But having said that, I still have a lot of affection for it because it's very bright and breezy. It tells the story in 5 pages. It's got all the things you want in a Silver Age origin. It's got radiation, it's got spaceships, intrepid explorers, conflict, a grasp that with great power comes great responsibility. So I do still feel a lot of affection for it. I'm not sure it was really worth me spending £120,000 on, but I know. And, you know, later on in the story you do get the Mole Man. So that's kind of value for money. Oh my god, what's happened to me? I've turned invisible. It's the rays, the terrible cosmic rays. Ooh, now this means I can steal things.